Good morning. We are live on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, but we want to bring our Facebook groups in as well. Mile High Huddle on Facebook, Mile High Huddle podcast, just about to hit 10,000 on Facebook. And the final one, the Mile High Huddle Superfans group. Those are the three Facebook channels that we stream to live, and you can find those on demand as well. Welcome in, everybody. This is Broncos for Breakfast. I am Scott Kennedy. I will be your solo host today. Nick is out doing one more excursion. I think he's doing a 60-mile multi-day backpack and fishing excursion through Idaho, through finding the Sasquatch. I don't know. He might look like a Sasquatch by the time he gets back. So it's just going to be me. I hope that's okay. Sorry, I'm not better looking. For those of you listening, sorry, I don't have more to say. But this seemed like a day I didn't want to pass up. There's been a lot going on with Broncos country. There's been a lot going on with training camp, on the field, off the field, injuries, he said, she said, all that type of stuff that I wanted to make sure we got in here today. This was an important day as we get close. And starting next week, we should be back on a regular schedule. At the very latest, the Monday after the first preseason game, we will start Mondays again, but Tuesdays and Thursdays from here on out, because we got a lot to talk about Broncos country. As we have worked our way into the chat, I want to say hello to some folks that have been here itching to get started. WTH, First No Fear says, good morning, Nick and Scott and all of Broncos country. Congratulations on your 300th episode. How did you know it was our 300th? Did someone else put that out there? I didn't even know it was our 300th episode. That's crazy. The Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler news sucks. We can't catch a break. What is your prediction on the depth chart? We'll get into that. Some of the things I want to get into, I usually like to start a show by saying, for those of you listening, hey, maybe do I want to listen to this or not? Some of the things I want to get into. I want to get into Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler. I want to get into availability. I want to get into the depth chart. Who stands to gain, who stands to lose, et cetera, et cetera. I want to get into Marvin Mims. I want to get into the Payton comments and the Rodgers reaction, et cetera, et cetera. Those are some of the things I want to hit on today. Then we will get into the chat to see what you want to talk about if we still have time. But those are the ones I wanted to hit on. Each one of those is a multi-day story in itself. So we'll get it going today. So appreciate you being here, WTH. Ethan, the DWI guys coming in from across the pond. Appreciate you coming in and checking in early. Said he was going to be here today. So was I. So we're going to have a show. We've been a little hit and miss this summer. Appreciate your patience. We have missed y'all, and we're looking forward to coming back stronger than ever after recharging the batteries a little bit this summer. Kevin Gray says, good morning, Nick and Scott. Big Mile High salute to Broncos country. Right back at you. It is very sad about Tim Patrick. Hope things get better for him. One of the best. Yeah, we'll talk about him a lot before the morning is over for sure. Kevin Gray says coffee is a perfect start. I haven't had my first sip of coffee yet. Check out lioncoffee.com, one of our benefactors. Patrick is a member of Broncos country, Patrick Wilsey, and keeps us well caffeinated from Lion Coffee. So thank you, Patrick. He's in Hawaii, so I don't expect him to be on the shows on a 5 or 6 hour time difference. It is wicked early for him to be up this early, but he's always checking in, and we appreciate that. Bama X says, good morning, Broncos country. Good morning to you, Bama X. Chase Wellner, hey guys, been itching to hear your thoughts on the last week. Well, we'll get Nick later, but you're going to get mine today. And as you know, I like to feel almost pathologically logical when it comes to things, almost like a robot. Now, we all have our biases. We all have our opinions, feelings, and that type of stuff. But, and listening to some of the guys, I don't think my thoughts on some of the Rodgers, Sean Payton stuff differ too much, honestly. But you'll hear my point of view on that coming from an outsider from Broncos country. Now, I'm part of the Mile High Huddle crew. Don't get me wrong. I'm part of this group for sure. But as far as a national feel, what is it going to look like from the outside in? I'm your guy. Bama X comes in. He says, I'm a firm believer in karma and putting good energy out there. So I feel like we were doing pretty good until Sean Payton made his comments. Then parts of Broncos country started attacking the New York Jets and Nathaniel Hackett. The timing on that could be the same. The timing on that Bama X could also be that, hey, practice was ramping up too. So doing pretty good, but you hadn't really done anything. That's the key. And with Tim Patrick, y'all have heard me warn, and I've warned it with Javonte Williams too, that secondary injuries follow ACLs like remoras on sharks. They just do. Hopefully not something as bad as blowing an Achilles, but you expect to hear a hamstring tweak, a calf strain, all of the things that you're not able to do to get the rest of your body up into football shape while you've been working that knee. It's tough, and there's really no way to get it ready other than to go out and play. And if your body holds up, your body holds up. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Unfortunately for Tim Patrick, his body has not held up very well over the last several years, parts of his career. So we will see. New season, same old stories. Somewhere Lauren Lando was saying, "See, it wasn't me." There's some of that is true, honestly. When you start talking about broken legs, torn Achilles. That said, my brother-in-law is he's a physical therapist, a medical doctor, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, what would you say if I said I had two guys tear pectorals on the same team within a couple of weeks of one another? He said they're training wrong, because that's a rare injury. A torn pec is a rare injury. The freak occurrence of now, could be coincidence. That's a weird one, man. That is definitely a weird one. Jason Walton says, good morning, guys. My heart sink about hearing Tim Patrick news and his roommate, KJ Hamler, as well. I hope they lean on each other for support during these trying times. Now, I'm assuming if you're in this chat, you know what we're talking about. But just in case, there's thousands of people that listen to this after the fact, you should know by now, yes, Tim Patrick suffered a torn Achilles and is gone for the year. And frankly, at his age, with his injury history, he may try and come back. But it wouldn't shock me if that was a career ender, if it was done. His latest contract, I think, gave him $17 million in guaranteed money when he signed that extension 2 years ago. And at the time was considered a bargain, because the contracts for wide receivers that offseason went through the freaking roof, $20 million a piece. So, when guys like Christian Kirk are getting $18 million a year guaranteed, you're like, this was a pretty good deal to get Tim Patrick locked down. It hasn't worked out that way because of injuries. But he's financially secure for the rest of his life. You worry a little bit more about a guy like Javonte Williams, a later round draft pick or something. He wasn't a later round guy, but you start talking, $4 million is nice money. Don't get me wrong. But you give a 21, 22-year-old kid $4 million, is he set for life? If he's responsible as hell, he might be. But Tim Patrick, I feel good no matter what. He's set. He's set for life no matter what happens moving on. So I'm glad he got that deal done and got that done before his injuries started happening. Whether it adversely affects the Denver Broncos, I root for people. I really do. The old saying in scouting and coaching and stuff is you end up rooting for the names on the back of the shirt instead of the names on the front of the shirt. I root for people, and I'm rooting for Tim Patrick. Alex Salazar says, good morning. Good morning to you as well. I want to say hello to some of the super chats that have come in as well. Troy Boer has come in with the big yellow super chat. He says, hey, Scott, best group on the team to lose two guys, speaking of the wide receivers, but still sucks. Glad about the offensive line help. And now one DL ad. We should be solid. Happy 300. So who put that out there? You'll have to put that in there for me, because I didn't actually see that. And as I was saying all along, I see a lot of familiar faces in here. So there's a lot of, repeat listeners. It never, ever made any sense to me from a football standpoint that Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy would be on the trading block. Ever. Never made any sense to me. Not financially, not from a depth chart perspective. I repeated over and over and over again, if Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy are on the trading block, there's something else going on. Or let me rephrase, because there's a price for everybody. Everybody's got a price. $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. If someone comes and offers me 3 first-round draft picks for Pat Surtain, I'll listen. He's not on the trading block. Everybody's got a price. But the rumors that we were hearing were, a high second or a third for Courtland Sutton, or a high second. That made zero sense to me. None. They are so much more valuable to this team considering that you didn't get financial relief from those guys, they're so much more valuable to this team than a third round pick would have been. Does anybody doubt that now, for goodness sakes? So if there was any truth to that, that if someone had offered a third round pick, let's see, what's that? Let's say a 75th, the 75th overall pick to the Denver Broncos, that they would have taken it for Cortland Sutton. I would have said something else is going on. Because this doesn't make sense from a football standpoint. This doesn't make sense from a financial standpoint. In one more year, it does. Next year, it does, because you can get the financial relief from that contract and you can have a lot more money to play with moving into next year. So we'll talk a little bit more about depth and what you actually lost, et cetera, as we get into this. Thank you, Troy. And Gary Palmer coming in says, good morning, Scott. Good morning to you as well, Gary. Let me keep an eye on the Facebook group, because I know I see Michael coming in, and Michael, as he is wont to do, likes to come in with stars. So I want to say thank you to Michael Ranquillo for coming in with those stars today. Appreciate you, Michael. And as always, he says, good morning, Scott and Nick on Broncos for Breakfast. Go Broncos and buck 'em. To you as well, my friend. Now, there's some doom and gloom that goes on. The Tim Patrick was out. And I think I mentioned before, where are the concerns with this team? It's like, well, we're writing Tim Patrick in like he's back. He might not be. And he was cleared. He was 100%, because it was awfully quiet around his rehab. There was a lot of chatter around Javonte Williams, but it was just assumed that he was going to be back. But what did you actually, from last year, if KJ Hamler's gone and Tim Patrick is gone, they were gone all year last year. Now you might turn around and say, hey, Scott, that's one of the reasons why we only won 5 games. I've lost track already in the past year. I think it was 5. I don't think it was 4. I think it was 5. That was one of the reasons we were 5-12 last year, because, of those injuries. Maybe you got the replacement for KJ Hamler in the draft. That's Marvin Mims. He was a replacement. You'll never convince me otherwise. Anything that you got from KJ Hamler after his history with this team was going to be gravy. He could not be relied upon. I'm not placing any blame. I'm just stating a fact. As a general manager, if I'm looking at this team, I cannot count on KJ Hamler to be able to write his name on a team sheet every single week. I can't do it. So what did I do? I went out and I traded up. I went and got a receiver. And now if I look at my top 3 guys and I say Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and Marvin Mims, a rookie as a number 3 who was a second-round draft pick, I'm still looking pretty good. And I didn't lose anything from last year, because those guys didn't play last year. Now, the offense was awful. I get that. They probably would have helped. You'd think they would have helped, but you never know. The key to this offense is still going to be the improvement on the offensive line, the better coordination from your head coach, Sean Payton, and Russell Wilson, and all syncing together. Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler are not going to make or break this offense. You even have, and it won't surprise me a bit if in the next few weeks you hear, okay, Javonte Williams is sitting out for a few days. He's got a little niggle. They might not even say anything specific. Then, like I said, a little calf strain, a sore hamstring, something like that. The Broncos have gone out and gotten insurance for Javonte Williams as well. So you've got the depth, you've spent the money, you've built the team that you can survive some of these smaller injuries. It's the bigger ones that start becoming a little scary. And your depth on the offensive and defensive line is definitely more scary. As far as the team goes as a unit, if you take the skill players and put them as one ball, and say, how am I looking at my skill players? Javonte Williams, Samaje Perine, Greg Dulcich. Then I go to Jerry Jeudy, Marvin Mims, Cortland Sutton. I'm at 6 right now of guys that are pretty good weapons to have out there on the field, and there's only one ball. So I'm not overly concerned from a football standpoint about what has happened with Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler. I'm much more concerned about them from a humanity standpoint. It's terrible for them. They have busted their asses to get back to be ready, and there's no football right now in their future. That sucks. That sucks for those guys. I know we're very selfish as fans when we think of, how does this affect me and my team? But this is a good group of people in here, and it sucks for them. It really does. That's where my head is. Um, I want to get some of your thoughts on this in the chat now that I've been monologuing for a little bit. Want to say Arthur's coming in over on Twitch. Hello, we'd love to say hello to our over the pond, across the pond Twitch user. He says good afternoon from Germany. To you as well. And I was just texting with one of my friends that the Women's World Cup ratings have to be just in the tank because y'all can't watch them in Europe either because of the time zone. So Arthur probably hasn't been watching a whole lot of the women's team, and we haven't been able to watch much of them either. So we're in the same boat in that one, Arthur. Appreciate you. As Jeremy says, as bad as an ACL is, an Achilles is way worse. Yeah, depending on the degree. But I've seen 20-year-old kids do Achilles and never come back quite right. It happened to 2 Chelsea players in the course of a couple of weeks, and neither one of them returned. One of them was like 24 and one of them was 20 years old, and neither one of them have really, really come back for that. Now, the first real shredded Achilles I ever saw in an athlete was Dominique Wilkins, who was an older guy in the time for the Atlanta Hawks and one of the best athletes to ever walk this planet. And he came back from it okay. And they have come back from it. But when you start saying Achilles and 3 ACLs and 30 years old and all of this type of stuff, at some point you're just going to say, we can't do this anymore. And expect that to happen with the Denver Broncos and Tim Patrick. There's no way Tim Patrick sees the end of that contract next year. 0% chance. Do they waive him and re-sign him? Do they restructure? Does he get a chance and to try and prove and get a non-guaranteed deal? Is that what's in his heart? I would think it is, that he would like to give it one more try. But we'll have to see. And as Chase says, it's a damn shame Tim went undrafted because of injury history too, and KJ Hamler fell to the second because of injury history. So it's definitely been tough. Definitely been tough. Eric Rink says, well, we know Russell isn't going to restructure his contract for anyone. Well, not this year. Again, to restructure a deal, usually you have to put more money on the back end of things because Aaron Rodgers just restructured his deal to open up more money for the New York Jets. But I guarantee over the course of time, he's not getting less money out of it. So in order to restructure a deal, you either have to have the leverage to be able to cut a guy. Let's say Tim Patrick, as harsh as that is, Tim Patrick next year has a $2 million dead cap hit against a big salary. That's a guy you can restructure. Hey, do you want to make $8 million or do you want to take your chances on the free agent market? Okay, well then restructure down to $8 million instead of 14. Or you've got a guy who's young and you feel like he's going to be around for another 7-8 years and you don't mind kicking that can down the road because we can address this later and the salary cap will increase in 5 or 6 years anyway. Cristiano coming in, he says, good morning, Scott and Broncos country. Devastated by the Tim Patrick injury, but agree with Scott. At least he's financially set. Yeah, and if it had to happen in any one position, the Broncos are going to be okay. And from a life standpoint, as much as it hurts to have, this taken away from you, it's a big part of your identity to these guys. In fact, for most of them, it is their identity. Who am I? I'm a football player, and have it taken away from them. There'll be some tough days. There will be more tough days for them. They've been through it, and it's just going to be hard. It's going to be hard, but money is one thing. And we can talk about that too, because there's been some news around the league, and I'm real interested in what's going on with Jonathan Taylor and the Indianapolis Colts. Because I've always been on the side of the players, just always. And the monopoly that is the NFL is not fair when it comes to what these guys are getting paid and how they're getting paid and where they're being told to play, et cetera, et cetera. It's un-American, man. It really is. But we can get into that another time. Chris Graham says, good morning. Well, good morning, Chris. I feel like it's a newer name to Broncos for Breakfast, but we haven't been here in a while and I'm old, so I may have just forgotten. So appreciate you being here as well. Miguel coming in says, good morning, Scott. Hope you have been well. To you too. I hope the Broncos rally around Tim Patrick and KJ and ball out for them. I think Sean Payton can help them get around all of this brutal news. Agree. I think there's a lot of denial that goes on. It's the only way you survive this game is the denial. It's always in the back of your mind that this can happen, but you push it out. You don't want to constantly be thinking about the guy that was hurt because, again, it manifests itself. You've got to play in some level of denial. That can't happen to me. They're gone. I got to take care of me, and they'll be fine. They'll rally around the Denver Broncos and a common enemy, whoever they have to face on the other side of the ball. Robot of Doom comes in and on Twitch. He says, Scott, what are your thoughts on Jarvis Landry as a Tim Patrick as a vet replacement for a year? Let me take a sip of coffee and I'll get into that one. Jarvis Landry is an interesting case in my history because I got to see Jarvis Landry when he was in high school. He came out and ran at one of my events, and I kid you not, he ran something. He's from Louisiana, and I kid you not, he ran somewhere in the 4.8s, if it was, or a 4.78. I have to look way back and see if I still had those notes. But he was a high 4.7 guy in the 40-yard dash, and he wasn't that big. 5'11", 195 pounds, running a 4.75. I'm like, man, I don't know about this guy. There's a lot of hype around this guy, but golly, he's not all that big, and he certainly isn't fast. By the end of the year, I put 5 stars next to his name. He's just that good a receiver. Everything else he does, he's just that good at it. Last year, though, he only played in 9 games. He started 3 with New Orleans. He had 25 catches for 272 yards. Now, I want you to listen to this track over the last 4 years: 1174, 840, 570, 272. That direction's headed the wrong way. Again, if you bring him in for a physical, you bring him in and put any kind of test him, he's not going to impress you with what he does on the watch. For me, right now, what I do is I go with the guys I've got, maybe sign somebody, a camp body to come in if I need to have an 8th wide receiver to come in so I can run my 4 wide receiver sets with my 2s over on the other practice field. But I'm waiting for cut down day. If I look at a depth chart right now, there are, let's see, 3, 6, 9, 12. There are 12 guys on a depth chart right now. Some are carrying 11, some are carrying 13. So let's say 12. They might carry 6 on a 53-man active roster. That means they're going to have to cut 6. 30 teams, I'm just going to say 30 to make the math easy. At 6 wide receivers apiece, that means there's going to be 180 wide receivers hit the waiver wires in a couple weeks. 180, almost 200 NFL wide receivers are going to be hitting the waiver wires in the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks. I'm not dipping into my available funds beyond, camp bodies until I see who's available as a wide receiver. And I would say that about most of the positions right now. Again, you go from a 90-man roster to a 53. If I round up and say that's 37 players, I'll round up to 40 and call it 30 teams. That's 1,200 players that are on NFL rosters right now. Over 1,000 players will become available in the next couple of weeks. You don't need to do anything that you're not comfortable with. You kick back. This is the season to evaluate what you've got. And when I mean season, I mean this time of year. To kick back, evaluate what you've got, and then decide where you need to look. And you're scouting other teams. The preseason, I'm looking at other teams. Who are they trying out in the preseason? Who's looking good for them? They might not be able to keep that guy. Let me make a move and see who's available. It's a good question, though, but I wouldn't make a move for any of the available free agent wide receivers right now beyond a camp body. Lauren Travera says, what's up, Scott? But being the best hands on the team, this hurts us a lot. With Tim Patrick, it's opportunity cost more than what you actually lose, because, again, he hasn't played. He didn't play last year. His career as a Denver Bronco, I mean, the last time he played was 2021. He's got 2,000 yards in his career as a Denver Bronco. The idea, it hurts you kind of like having a draft pick that doesn't pan out hurts you, And it hurts you because you've got money tied up into him. It hurts you from a leadership standpoint because he's not going to be on the field theoretically. But no, this isn't a death knell for this team. It's not even like a wide receivers are a group, so it's not like even a singular position where okay, I've got two edge guys on the field. I lose one, I'm kind of in trouble. No, I can have five wide receivers on the field at a time. He's one of those guys. It doesn't help, that's for sure, but it's not something that's it's not a killer blow for this team. It's just I just don't believe that it is. Dominique Martin. Speaking of Dominiques, I already mentioned my Dominique Wilkins. I was an Atlanta child of the 80s. Dominique was my guy. He says, hey, Scout K, what's up, Broncos country? MHH for life, just showing love per usual, and we appreciate that. Kaleon Green is showing up as well. He says, yo back. Hey, yo. Let me see as I get through here, and then we'll move on a little bit. Sowell comes in. He says, good morning, Scott. After this injury, do you consider the wide receiver group a weakness? Hello from Chihuahua, Mexico. Do I consider it a weakness? No, because you're still running out there with three guys that are pretty good. Two that are proven. When you start looking at wide receiver groups, how many times do you say, okay, I'm getting to the number three and their number three guy scares the hell out of me? It's usually a one and maybe another one. And it's usually paired with a tight end. There's usually two receivers on the good teams that really make you nervous. It isn't four. It's not four. Those guys can be decent. But if I go to the third wide receiver on a team, there's very few of them where the third wide receiver is like, okay, that guy scares the hell out of me. And you're solid. You're pretty good in that situation. If I go Greg Dulcich, if I go Jerry Jeudy, Marvin Mims, and Cortland Sutton, I'm still in decent shape. I still feel pretty good about that. All right, let's move down a little bit, and as we go in, and Gary Fire says it's Hall of Famer hitting time. Kendall Hinton's been pretty reliable. That is one of those things. Dominique says, I was named after Dominique Wilkins. And see, I can tell that's true because he spelled Wilkins' name right. That's pretty cool, man. That is pretty cool. Appreciate that. Let's go to the other thing I wanted to hit at. We're about 30 minutes. We'll go about 40, 45 today or so, depending on this. The other big news last week was Sean Payton. And, kind of it started off as taking up for his team, which I understand. It's the first real signs of that we've seen from him. We've seen some talk is like, well, he hasn't said anything positive about Russ. I'm like, well, he hasn't said anything positive about anybody, on the team. It's been, or he didn't say anything, insert player name here. Well, Greg Dulcich, he certainly didn't seem very impressed. Any of these guys, it was more along the lines of, we're just trying to get to know these guys and, they're not making any real comments. But it started off last week with him basically taking up for Russell Wilson, saying basically, I'm tired of Russell Wilson taking all these shots. There's no way he just fell off a cliff. Didn't happen. And then it turned into, basically kind of naming names, which you don't do. You don't do that. You don't typically do that. How many times have you seen a coach go after another coach, whether it was a predecessor or we had some things to clean up? That happens all the time, but certainly not a coach that's active on another team. It's kind of an unwritten rule. This is a coaching fraternity. You don't see former coaches, and this is why it's kind of boring, go into the broadcast booth and do that very often. They get up there and they still spout their cliches and they protect their own. They're still part of the fraternity. There's a saying, and I'm going to butcher it, but you'll get the gist of it. When spoken, the truth should always be said, but the truth doesn't always need to be spoken. So, what did Sean Payton say that wasn't true? Nothing. He didn't say anything that wasn't true. But should he have gone out and started naming names and doing that? Probably not. He came out, and I wouldn't say he apologized for it. He didn't apologize for what he said. He apologized that he said it publicly. I don't need to be saying these things publicly. It basically was his apology. which is fine. Keep that kind of stuff in-house. You can say it to other people. You can let it leak. That's what you have reporters for, friendly reporters, saying, sources have said that this this new Broncos coaching staff and administration were appalled by some of the things they saw that this team was doing last year. Let that come out through Kliss. Let that come out through Mile High Huddle. That's why you have friendly reporters, for God's sakes. That's politics. At this level of NFL, it is politics as well. Now, and Gary Fire says Sean was just protecting his players, and that's fine. That's fine. You do that without tearing someone else down. And that's where it came into problem. And from the outside, there's not going to be anybody not wearing orange and blue that is going to approve of what Sean Payton did. It's not going to happen. It goes against the, I can't come up with a better phrase than unwritten rules, but it's almost like the sportsmanship of this game, of the game. You just don't do that. I told y'all from the very beginning, when I said Sean Payton was my number one choice for this job, I said Sean Payton is an arrogant a-hole, but he's your arrogant a-hole, and you'll love him for it. You will. You'll love him for it. That doesn't change who he is. It's not going to change how he's really seen from the outside. That's the kind of stuff that Sean Payton does that you'll love him for when he's on your side, and you'll hate him when he's not. When he's on your side, who cares? Who cares what the New York media, what the Jets think about your coach? Who cares? It doesn't matter. Is that going to help you win a game? No, it's not. It's not going to change the outcome. But Sean Payton is an arrogant ass. He's been an arrogant ass for 25 years. I still wanted him for this job because he's a phenomenal football coach. That's what matters. Wins and losses are what matters. We don't have to go play golf together. I don't care. I would like to. I think he's a very interesting person. We don't have to sit down and have a cup of coffee together. I need him to go out there and win football games. I've said that forever because I followed college really, really closely. I made a living at it for 20 years. I went to Auburn. I like Nick Saban. I love Nick Saban. He is a cold-blooded, cutthroat mercenary, but he's not a hypocrite. He doesn't try to be your friend. He doesn't care. I want to go out and win football games. That's what I do. He's a freaking Terminator. Then you got Urban Meyer, who's like, we're going to do things better than everybody else. And we're the 1% of the 1%. And he's cheating his ass off and hiring a bunch of guys that are knocking over convenience stores with AK-47s. That's a hypocrite. Those are the ones I don't like. I've always said, I don't mind an a-hole. They're honest. I don't like a hypocrite. They're dishonest. I don't like that. And then on the Aaron Rodgers, when he came back and said it, if you read his comments, they sound harsher than I think they actually did. Aaron Rodgers, when I watched the interview with him, he didn't say anything that I didn't just say, which was basically, I can't believe he did that to another coach. And neither could I, frankly. Nathaniel, he didn't, and the thing that I pointed out in the chat when we first had this conversation is he didn't try and defend anything that Nathaniel Hackett did last year. Nothing. He didn't come out and say, well, George Payton cut his legs off, or Russell Wilson came in 40 pounds overweight, or the offensive line was a shambles. He didn't say anything. He didn't try and defend Nathaniel Hackett at all. He just came out and said, he's a good man and doesn't deserve this from someone else inside his profession. And Sean Payton shouldn't be doing that type of stuff either. And he finished it with he needs to keep my coaches' names out of his mouth. And that sounds harsh, but he didn't say anything that I really didn't disagree with, because in this profession, you don't go after somebody that's also in this profession. And that's how I feel about it. And y'all may disagree. But like I said, on the grand scheme of things, doesn't matter. It really doesn't. It makes for good sound bites on ESPN, the Ocho, when they need to fill 24 hours of programming. As far as what they really need to do, which is win games, stay healthy, gel as a team. It may have even helped. It may have actually even helped the Denver Broncos. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. What Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets think about Sean Payton does not matter. Let me let me go. And Roderick says, what seems to offend people is Payton was right. No, I disagree. And I just said so. There wasn't anybody that defended Nathaniel Hackett's job last year. There's no one that came out and said Nathaniel Hackett did a good job last year. He's wrong. Nobody said he was wrong about what he said. Nobody. They just said, hey, this is out of line. That's what they're saying. And I don't disagree with that. And he may have been forced to. I don't know. The backlash came quickly, but Sean Payton came out and said I was out of line. I shouldn't have done that. I got all geeked up on my coffee. I like to play a game with y'all. Tell me when the caffeine hits Scott's blood. You can usually tell. It's like I got geeked up on a couple of lattes, and all of a sudden my mouth is running too much. And if it can happen to me, it can happen to all of y'all. So y'all watch your mouth, is what he then told the team. Those are the things I wanted to get off of my chest today with y'all. So if we're going to get out of here just here in a couple of minutes, unless y'all have some burning desires you want to get in, let me go back through the chat here a little bit and just what I see. I did see a comment, and let me check it. I did see a comment about Cortland Sutton's contract. And where I'm coming with that one is not Cortland Sutton. I'm sorry. It was Tim Patrick's contract. But actually it was Cortland Sutton's contract, because I was saying it makes more sense to make a move with Cortland Sutton next year as far as this year. And it was part of the June 1 designation, et cetera, et cetera. But in 2023, he had a dead cap hit of 25.5 and a cap hit of 19. Even if you split that, you may have been able to save $6 million, and you're still carrying a big dead cap hit of $12 million next year. However, if you were to make a move next year at any point in time, let's say you just waived him and didn't even trade him, because I don't think you're going to be able to trade him and get someone to pay $13 million. His base salary is $13 million next year. His cap hit is $17 million next year. His dead cap hit is 7.6. Even if you were to flat out waive him next year, you get $10 million back. You have a $7 million, $7.6 million dead cap, and that's just for 1 year. So if you were going to make a move with Cortland Sutton, it did not make any financial sense to me to do it this year. It does next year. Now you're hoping Cortland Sutton turns into an $18 million receiver like he was showing several years ago before that knee injury. He had a decent year last year. All things considered, he had a pretty good year last year. Can he take that and go up steps, notch, up 3 steps for the 2023 season? I think so. I think he can absolutely start getting back onto close to that path of where he was. I believe it was his second year when he was one of the best young receivers in the game. So that was one of those things as well I wanted to come back to with Cortland Sutton. Didn't make sense financially this year. It doesn't. Not compared to the huge financial benefits you would get if that's what your main goal is next year, moving on from Cortland Sutton. And frankly, Tim Patrick's deal is the same way. I've said a zillion times, George Payton set up these contracts that he could hit the nuke button after the 2023 season if he needs to. And that includes Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's contract would still be a big number. But if he needs to make a move for 2024, his dead cap number goes from his number this year is it's something like $107 million on the dead cap. The negative drops to a lot. It drops to 85. You'd still have to split it and eat $80 million or $40 million a year. It'd still be tough. It would still be tough. And FC Donnelly says, I didn't see the Rodgers, but isn't that just a Will Smith reference? Yeah, he deadpanned it though. Rodgers was pissed, so he didn't say it with a smile on his face. He was pissed. Listen, as far as, keep your coaches' names, and he did say names, keep my coaches, plural, names out your mouth. So I've said my piece on that. And so is Sean Payton, for that matter. There was one tiny clip in his press conference yesterday. Cared to comment about Aaron Rodgers' comments, and Sean Payton's like, nope, we're past it. Good. And that's where it should be. I said something. I apologize for it. They said something. We're done. We move on. And that's how it should be. These are professionals. They're not beyond reproach. Said all along, one of the phrases I absolutely hate is trust the coaches. I don't trust the coaches. They're human beings. They're going to make mistakes, lots of them. I trust the coaches to do what they think is right. I don't trust them to be right. But they're professionals. They moved on, did the right thing eventually. Zach Powers asked, Scott, how does Payton's comments make you feel about George Payton's job? I felt George Payton was already in a tough spot, but the comments backed that idea. Zach, going back a ways, I said I didn't think George Payton would be the general manager of this team come September 1st. Coming into and out of the draft, I hedged on that. I said I think he will be here at least one more year. They seem to be saying all the right things, kumbaya, not just for the cameras. That said, I still think George Payton this will probably be his last year. Wouldn't surprise me. He would want something where he have a little bit more control and not be a number two, but be a true general manager. I think that's where I think that's where he'll be. And then Sean Payton will probably try and bring in somebody that he's worked with in the past. Fallen Angel says, please talk about the new O-lineman. I don't know a whole lot about him because there isn't really a whole lot to know. I looked him up yesterday, and I think he's only got like 4 or 5 starts in his or games in his career. So this is a depth addition for camp. I don't expect him to be too big of a, pushing for a starting role. We haven't seen that guy signed just yet. Miguel says, I think it's too expensive to cut Tim Patrick this year. Probably go on the IR and be cut next year. Yeah, for sure. Again, you look at you've already made it past June 1. Tim Patrick's numbers go into this year. His dead cap would be, his cap hits 11. His dead cap is 10. Okay. You want to save $1 million and waive the guy with an injury designation. So be it. But next year, his cap hit is 13. His dead cap is 2.3. $11 million. There's no way, no how, no way Tim Patrick is playing on that contract with the Denver Broncos next year. No way. 0% chance. 0% chance. Coming in on here to close us out. That's a good way to get us out of here. The closer is back. Coming in red hot. It's been plenty hot out there this summer. I hope y'all are doing okay. He says, great solo show, Scott. Ethan, the DWI guys over in England, says Mims and Dulcich will have to pick up slack, but Payton will put whoever in the right positions to succeed. I feel for Tim Patrick and Hamler, but the Broncos will be fine. And I agree. The Broncos are going to be okay. This isn't going to be what's going to make or break this season for the Denver Broncos. There's plenty of offensive skill weapons still out there. It certainly wasn't going to be Hamler. I wasn't counting on Hamler to even make the team. And we're hedging our bets with Tim Patrick because of his injury history. And so were the Denver Broncos. That's why they traded up and got Marvin Mims. Makes sense, doesn't it? On that note, we're going to get out of here. Appreciate you, Ethan. Want to say thank you to our Super Chat superstars, Troy, Gary, and Michael coming in with stars. Miguel, I missed you on this. Let me get this one real quick from Miguel, who came in with some stars also. As I look over my shoulder, he says, I hear other outlets freaking out about the offense doing horrible in camp. Is this an overreaction? I feel like you won't have a feel until the next week or so. Miguel, you won't have a feel until you start playing against guys with different color helmets on. You can set up the offense or defense to look however you want to. When I can control the defense, I can make the offense look good. When I can control the offense, I can make the defense look good. Are you making the easy throws? Russell Wilson's not missing those with the install or whatnot. How much pressure are they putting in? Because remember, you've got a new defensive coordinator that is trying to put his system in as well. He can't just afford to back off and let these guys, you know what you're doing. Let's back off and let this new offense get installed. Everybody's new, and the defense is going to be ahead of the offense. But from an individual standpoint, Lloyd Cushenberry's looked great. Great. He's going against Matt Henningsen. We don't want Matt Henningsen to be the starter anyway. Or Matt Henningsen has looked great. Well, great. He's going against Lloyd Cushenberry. Lloyd Cushenberry is a guy we've been trying to get rid of for 3 years. So until you've got someone on the other side of the line that has a different color jersey on, you don't know what you've got. And frankly, guys, Miguel, that's going to be 4 or 5 weeks into the regular season. And even then, Week 14 is going to look very different from week 4. So take everything you hear from camp with a grain of salt. All of it. It's all internal. Oh man, Russell Wilson was 7 for 7 on in the 11v11s. Well, great. They were playing, a cover 3 and giving them the other underneath stuff because they were working on trying to get, gap control from their defensive tackles. It doesn't mean anything. Take everything you hear from camp with a grain of salt. Even the preseason is about trying guys out. It's not about how good a team's going to be. Regular season, man. That's when we'll know. That's when we'll know. Can you be concerned? Marble Racing says I'm concerned. You should be concerned. You should absolutely be concerned. This team was terrible last year. You can't just flip a switch and go from what we saw last year, which was historically one of the worst offenses in a long time, to being a top 5 offense. You should be concerned. But you should be hopeful that things are on the right track and getting better. On that note, I'm going to get out of here. Nick and I will be back on Thursday. Thank you so much for coming in, and thank you to all of our Super Chat superstars and from our Facebook stars folks, including Michael and Miguel, who've come in a couple times. Make sure you're following the mothership on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, or the X, whatever you want to call it. You can follow me on Scout Kennedy to make sure on the X and Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I will be back tomorrow talking Falcons on my channel, youtube.com/Scott Kennedy. But I will be back here on Thursday with y'all, and we can get a little bit more news from camp, see who's doing well, see who's come in, see if there's any new signings, etc., etc. And on that note, everybody, thanks for being here. Love y'all.